بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. اللهم ربنا زدنا علما وعملا وإخلاصا يا رب العالمين. اللهم انصر أوليائك في غزة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي كل مكان. اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم فرج عن أوليائك في غزة وفي فلسطين كلها وفي كل مكان. اللهم نفس كربنا وكربنا وثبت أقدامنا وأقدامهم والطف بنا وبهم يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك ونبيك وصفيك وخليلك محمد وآله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Okay, so we are continuing from here. I think the significance of the capacity for political corporations to hold property ought to be noted. So he already said that every state is a political corporation, but not the other way around. And the significance of the property is because of capitalism, above all in this context, as we'll see. Of critical importance is the fact that this property does not accrue to individual person. That's important because capitalism actually abolishes private property. And the fact that the property in modern state doesn't belong to individuals or collective of individuals, but to state as a fictitious individual or a legal person is due to capitalism, due to the fact that it is a capitalist state. Let's think a bit about it because it's an important point. So, contrary to what people normally think, capitalism actually is not about private property. In fact, capitalism abolishes private property because the sole purpose of property, a capitalist property that you call capital, is to accumulate itself. So property, there's no other purpose of capital property. So that's why, if the only purpose is to accumulate itself, so then it is not a private property in that sense, because private property you can use as you wish, but capitalist property you can only use to multiply it. That's the sole purpose of capitalist property. And private property is abolished in capitalism, in the sense that as capitalism matures, most of the purpose of the most of property becomes this accumulation for the sake of accumulation, and it's a very small proportion of property which actually is generally private in capitalism. Now, relate this to this claim that modern state property, and there we are talking about public property, is not owned by individuals or collection of individuals. So we are not the owners of the property of the state, but the state is itself an owner of that property as a fictitious person, as a legal person, that's because if we own property collectively, then we are, in that sense, it is in a sense private property for these collectivity of owners, and they can potentially use it as they wish. But that's precisely what modern state, as a capitalist state, doesn't want to happen. So that's why the capitalist state owns the property. So this property can only be used to accumulate itself and for no other purpose, as much as possible, to the extent that it has power over any other alternatives as a capitalist state. So that's the important point, I think. So the significance of the capacity of political corporations to hold property ought to be noted. Of critical importance is the fact that the property does not accrue to individual persons. Revenues raised by such corporations by the levying of taxes or the impositions of tariffs or licensing fee, or by any other means, become the property of the corporation, not of particular governments or officials or monarchs or any other natural person who is able to exercise authority in the name of the corporation. Or as I said, neither, you don't even own collectively. even if there is some formally, even if it is formally acknowledged that it is owned by public, its public ownership means the ownership by the state. The political corporation being an abstract entity, and in that sense, state is an abstract entity, as a capital is an abstract entity, and they match in that abstraction. The political corporation being an abstract entity cannot enjoy the use of this property, only redistribute it among the agents through whom it exercises power, and others whom these agents are able or obliged to favor. But increasingly, because this state is by its very nature capitalist state, it distributes property among agents who are capitalists, who are able to accumulate more. So increasingly, as a state becomes capitalist state, or matures as a capitalist state, the redistribution goes to the agents. So the state, as a legal person or fictitious person or abstract entity, owns property. So it can't use itself because it's a fictitious person, but it distributes, it acts through agents, and it redistributes or distribute this property to the agents. But how does it choose its agents to whom it redistributes this property? What's the criterion? The criterion is it gives preference to, and ultimately absolute preference to, the agents who are able to accumulate more, meaning the agents who are actually capitalists, successful capitalists. So the agents who incarnate the capitalist rationality more perfectly, and the agents who refuse to or unable to practically accumulate or dedicate themselves fully to accumulation for the sake of accumulation, those agents get less and less of that property, or ultimately nothing. So the criterion for this redistribution of property is that whether you are able to use that property only for one purpose, that is accumulation for the sake of accumulation. So only distributed among agents through whom it exercises power, and among others whom these agents are able or obliged to favor. The state is not the only political corporation capable of raising revenue and acquiring property, though it will generally be the most voracious in its appetite, because as it becomes more and more a capitalist state. And if you want to actually historically see this, you will see that manifested in the early modern period in the person of Henry VIII, who grabbed and confiscated the church property, the property of the monasteries and all that, at a historically exceptional rate, and historically exceptional rate, and historically exceptional level. Okay, so the state is not the only political corporation capable of raising revenue and acquiring property, though it will generally be the most voracious in its appetite, and it grabs that property from individual persons or collective persons, and give it to those who can use this property to accumulate more property. So it redistributes or dedicates that property only to those people who show the desire and show the ability to accumulate this property for the sake of accumulation, or to turn this property into capitalist property. I think we'll stop here, and because it's a slightly different topic, the topic of sovereignty. We'll just we'll start from here, I guess. One question that arises is whether the best way to describe the state is as sovereign power. Okay.